You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and this is part 2 of my 2020 NFL free agency preview. I'm going to be going through 21 to 40 on Pro Football Focus's list of the top NFL free agents. And I'm going to tell you where I think they're going to sign, how much they're going to get, all that good stuff. We'll just get the show rolling, I guess. I mean, I don't think anything's going to change. I really don't. Life has not come to an end. We can still travel. If you're going to sign a bunch of free agents, then quite honestly, just charter a jet for them. You have the money to do it. Charter a jet, have them take the physicals, and then have a small press conference. I'm sure you could find a doctor willing to give this guy a physical. Also, I do just want to say that I know that Hunter Henry, Justin Simmons, and Yannick Ngakoue got franchised, so obviously I'm not going to talk about them. I talked about Henry and Simmons on Friday's show, so that was before I knew that they were going to get franchised. But technically I got it right. I did say that they were going to stay with their respective teams, so hey, I got it right. And Ngakoue, I was going to say, was going to stay with the Jaguars anyway, so I'm 3 for 3. Alright. Enough of the minutia. Let's just jump right into number 21, Jack Conklin. Now, Conklin has been linked to the Jets heavily. I said that last week. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to bring Brandon Shell back, and I don't think they're going to have the money to sign everyone that they need to sign, plus Jack Conklin. I like Conklin. I think Conklin's a great player, and there's no question that he's the best right tackle on the market, but I don't think he's going to the Jets. Instead, I think he's going to the Cleveland Browns. I don't know what the analytics say about Conklin. I know that Pro Football Focus had him at an 80.6 overall grade. They had him as the 10th best tackle in the NFL. But I'm sure that the analytics say that keeping Baker Mayfield upright is incredibly important to their success. If Mayfield had a better coach and a better offensive line, the Browns would have been much better than they were. I mean, they went 6-10, and some of those losses you can put directly on the coach and their abysmal offensive line. The Browns have a lot of cap space by adding Conklin and Anthony Harris. They're a playoff team. I know we said that last year, but I really think that adding Conklin and Harris pushes them over the edge. If you don't know what I'm talking about with Anthony Harris, listen to Friday's show, part 1. As for how much Conklin's going to get, he's looking at least 13 mil, probably a little more. He's young, in the prime of his career. I don't think the Browns would hesitate to give him a big 5 or 6 year deal. Number 22 is Brandon Scherff. He was just franchised, so I'll move right along to number 23, Devin McCourty. I think he's going to stay with the Patriots. I think he's going to try to help Brady get one last ring. I like McCourty a lot. Local kid, went to Rutgers, and I think he's staying with the Patriots. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he gave them a hometown discount. I think Devin McCourty is destined to spend his entire career with the Patriots. Moving on now to Joe Thuney, another lifelong Patriot, although he doesn't have the track record that McCourty does. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think Thuney is destined to become a Jet. This goes out to all the Jets fans that want the Jets to focus entirely on offense this offseason and none on defense. They're getting the best left guard available. I think they're going to get the best center in Connor McGovern. With Beachum, Thuney, McGovern, Winters, and Shell protecting Darnold, there's no reason why he can't have a good year. Alright, if Darnold doesn't succeed next year with that O-line, he's a bust. It's just that simple. Joe Thuney is going to the Jets. As for how much, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he got in the neighborhood of $8.5 million. I don't think he's worth $10 million a year. He's certainly not worthy of being the highest paid left guard in football. But $8.5 million for a guy like Thuney makes perfect sense. Moving on now to Shaq Barrett. And Barrett is really, really interesting. He's a guy who led the NFL in sacks last year with 19 and a half. He's young. He's only 27 years old. Those guys get overpaid in free agency. And Barrett has always been perennially underrated. There's no doubting he's talented, but now this guy is shaping up to be the next, I don't know, big paid edge rusher in the NFL. I guess that's the best way of putting it. He's not worth that. There's a chance that he could get $17 million a year. There are two teams that really need an edge rusher. Seahawks and Texans. The Seahawks, I think, are going to lose Clowney to the Jets. They'll look to Barrett to fill that role. And for the Texans to trade Clowney and then replace him with Barrett is the ultimate coup. It wouldn't surprise me if he went to either one of those places. Or he could end up being franchised by the Buccaneers. Or locked up long-term by the Buccaneers. But where's the fun in predicting that? I'm gonna say that the Texans are gonna end up with Barrett. I think they'll be a little more motivated to get a deal done. The Seahawks historically have looked to the draft to fill their holes. The Texans haven't. So, I'll say that the Texans end up with him. Number 26 is Yannick Ngakoue. I'm going to skip him because he was franchised. That moves us now to Emmanuel Sanders. And Sanders is not going to get a big contract. I don't even feel comfortable predicting his contract. He may be asked to take a $6.5 million deal. Maybe for 1 year, maybe for 2. I don't know. 3 maybe. Look, you have to realize that this wide receiver draft class is incredibly stacked. It's one of the best in history. What would you rather do if you're a team that needs a wide receiver? Sign a guy like Sanders, who's at the end of his career and only has 2 or 3 good years left in him max? Or would you rather draft a wide receiver? I'll tell you right now, I'd rather draft one. I think Sanders is going to have to take a significant pay cut. Out of the teams that need a wide receiver, the only one that I think makes sense for him is the Eagles. They're the only team that I could see being aggressive in pursuing a wide receiver. We all know the story. Every one of them got hurt. They had a college quarterback playing wide receiver for him. Granted, Greg Ward looked good, but no one's going to be mistaking him for Harold Carmichael anytime soon. I think it makes the most sense for Sanders to go to the Eagles, give Wentz a reliable weapon, and he can look at it as taking a pay cut to play for a playoff team. That's how he can save face. Moving on now to Arik Armstead. And I am confident saying that he is not going to re-sign with the 49ers. They have too many young defensive players as it is. Armstead is going to get a huge contract in free agency. I'm talking like $13 million a year. The Niners don't have to match that. They don't have the money to match it. And the team that would be the most motivated to sign him is the Seattle Seahawks. After losing out on Clowney, losing out on Shaq Barrett, they get to poach Armstead from a division rival. They would do backflips over that. They may even prefer Armstead to Barrett, just to stick it to the Niners a little bit. I know that the Seahawks historically look to improve their roster through the draft and shrewd trades, but I think this is a can't-miss opportunity. I think Armstead is going to be a Seahawk. Moving on now to the man with one of the best names in the NFL, and that is Clinton Dix. You really can't get much better than that. I'm sorry. It's kind of sad that he's bounced around so many teams recently. Since 2018, he's been on the Packers, Redskins, Bears, and insert fourth team here, because I don't think the Bears are going to bring him back. They don't have the cap space for it, and I just don't see him signing long-term with the Bears. He signed a one-year prove-it deal there. It worked out for him. He rebuilt his stock, and now he gets to get a big money deal from the Miami Dolphins. They released Rashad Jones. They really don't have another good safety. Steven Parker has talent, but no one's going to be mistaking him for Ed Reed anytime soon. He's not bad. He has potential, but I wouldn't call him great yet. I think Clinton Dix can help Parker get to a good spot. The Dolphins have a lot of money. They have the most cap space in the NFL. I think Clinton Dix makes perfect sense for the Dolphins. As for how much he's going to get, he'll probably get, let's say, over $8 million a year. I can't say he's going to get more than a guy like Malcolm Jenkins or Adrian Amos. He's just not as good as them. $8 million a year, gets signed long-term to the Dolphins. I think that's a good fit for Clinton Dix. Moving on now to Eric Ebron. And I remember when Jets fans were clamoring for this guy. I mean, he's never been great. He's been a big disappointment since coming into the NFL. He was taken really high in the draft, 10th overall in 2014, and he was hyped up to be the next great tight end in this league. He's been good. He hasn't been great. And Ebron, he would have been a good Jet, but I'm happy with Chris Herndon, I'm happy with Ryan Griffin, and I'm happy with Trayvon Wesco. So, I don't want the Jets to go after him. The Colts could bring him back, but realistically, a team that needs a tight end more is the Green Bay Packers. I understand that historically they haven't spent money in free agency, but last year Brian Gutekunst signed Adrian Amos, Zadarius Smith, and Preston Smith. Just to name a few. This is a new regime. It helped get the Packers back to the playoffs. He'll help replace Jimmy Graham. I think Eric Ebron would be a perfect Packer. I like the idea of him playing with Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers will probably be motivated to poach him from a rival. As for how much he's gonna get, it's kind of tough. He's not worth $8 million a year, but Trey Burton got $8 million a year, and Eric Ebron is better than Trey Burton. Jared Cook got $7.5 million. In a perfect world, Ebron wouldn't get that, but he's better than Jared Cook. I'd love to sign him for like $7 million, but I'll probably get 8.25. It's an overpay, but the Packers can afford it. I don't mind it. I really think that Ebron is destined to be a Packer. Moving on now to a very underrated player, and that is Trey Boston. It feels like he's been in the league forever. This will be his 7th year, but he's only 27 years old. He's going to be 28 when the season starts. There aren't too many teams that need safeties, and there are better safeties available than him. So I think Boston is going to circle back to the Panthers. As for how much he's going to get, I don't think he's going to break the bank. Let's say somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 million a year. Moving on now to another very underrated player, and that is DJ Reader. I did not realize that this guy had this good of a year. According to Pro Football Focus, last year he had an 85.5 overall grade. He was the 7th best defensive lineman in football, according to their metrics. I knew he had a really good year and he's been a perennially underrated player, but I didn't realize he was that good. I think the Texans will be motivated to bring him back, pairing him with Shaq Barrett and J.J. Watt. That has the potential to be one of the best defensive lines in football next year, if not the best defensive line in football. As for how much he's going to get, when you look at the contracts for defensive tackles, the 4-3 guys get paid more than the 3-4 guys. The Texans play a 3-4. So Reader is going to eclipse all the 3-4 guys. He'll probably get more than Sheldon Richardson. I think he's getting at least $13 million a year. Easy. And you know what? I don't mind that at all. Speaking of defensive tackles, Javon Hargrave is next on the list. Hargrave and Reader are very similar players. Massively underrated, immensely talented. And I think Hargrave is going to circle back to the Steelers. The only team that I could see making a play for Hargrave, or Reader for that matter, is the Vikings. Because they don't have a great defensive line. But even then, the Vikings don't have a lot of cap space. They only have $20 million. I don't see them as major threats in this free agent market. So I think Hargrave is going to end up back with the Steelers for about $10.5 million a year. From underrated to overrated, we go to Leonard Williams. If Joe Douglas does nothing else right as Jets GM, he can always hang his hat on the fact that he got a 3rd-round pick for Leonard Williams. This guy is without question one of the most overrated players in the NFL. He only has 7.5 sacks in the last 3 seasons. I understand when you look at the advanced metrics, it looks really good. But as someone who watched him play, and there's no one that saw Leonard Williams in green more than me, I'm telling you, this guy is incredibly overrated. He is not one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL. The Giants have to bring him back. It's just that simple. You can't trade a third-round pick for a guy who only played, 8 games for you? That's absolutely ridiculous. He's going to get a big contract from the Giants. I don't think there's a question about that. I don't think there's a question that he's going to get at least $13 million. But you know what? It's not going to work out for the Giants. Sorry. I hate to tell you this. Actually, no, I don't, because I hate the Giants. But I'll tell you right now, this is going to be a big, big, big black mark on Gettleman's legacy, if I can use that word. And God only knows what's going to happen with Daniel Jones. I have heard so many people say that Daniel Jones is a surefire guarantee to be the next great quarterback. And when you hear Gettleman talk about Jones, he raves about him. Well, first up, he has to. His whole legacy is staked on Jones. Second up, watch him play. He has moments where he looks really good. And he reminds you so much of Eli Manning, it's scary. But can he cut down on the turnovers, please? Can he get more than 3 wins in a year, please? Before we start calling this guy a surefire franchise quarterback? I don't even mind saying that after his rookie year. I have no problem saying that about Kyler Murray. But we just need to pump the brakes on Daniel Jones. That's all I'm saying. I don't think the Giants have a bright future. Now, I may be jaded in saying that, but I just don't think there's a lot to be optimistic about here. You have a head coach who no one had ever heard of before. Now, he surrounded himself with smart people. There's no question. But I just don't think the future is bright for the Giants. Who's going to want to play for Joe Judge? That's the question you need to answer. He reminds you a lot of Tom Coughlin when you hear him speak. And look, I listened to his press conference. I was really impressed. But look what happened with Tom Coughlin in Jacksonville. He ran them into the ground. The players revolted against him. The old school NFL guys don't work anymore. They have to change up their approach. Football is the only sport where I can say that analytics work. You may think that I'm just saying this as a biased Jets fan, and maybe there's some unconscious bias here, but I try to be impartial all the time. I just really don't think there's a lot to be excited about with the Giants. Moving on now to Derrick Henry. And how on God's earth can you have Henry, a guy who single-handedly won 2 playoff games last year, behind some of these guys? He should be 29th. He should be between Armstead and Clinton Dix. Derrick Henry is a million times better than Leonard Williams, Hargrave, Reeder, and Trey Boston. And Eric Ebron, too. But, whatever. Derrick Henry is going back to the Titans. I don't think there's a question about that. They have to bring him back. It's just that simple. There's some people, and I mentioned this before, there's some people that are saying that Henry's more important than Tannehill. You know what? You can make that argument. You want to tell me that running backs are replaceable? There are very few running backs that can do what Derrick Henry did for the Titans against the Patriots and the Ravens. This guy is going to get a huge contract this year. $12 million at least. Per year. Not total. Per year. And he'll be worth every cent of it. Moving on now to another guy who I think is going to stay with his team, and I've had a lot of that recently, Jimmy Ward. There aren't too many teams out there that need safeties. This is really Ward's first great year. I mean, I'll read you his stats right now. Last year, dominant. Year before, got hurt. Year before, got hurt. Year before that, 66.9 overall grade. Year before that, 72.3 overall grade. And the year before that, he didn't play a lot. I think he may have been hurt. In any other world, Ward would get a high contract because that's how NFL free agency works. You get your one good year under your belt, bam, that's it. Massively overpaid. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think Ward is going to have to sign a 1-year prove-it deal back with the 49ers, and he'll try it again next year. Who knows? Maybe next year there will be 15 teams that need a new safety, and Ward will have his pick. But I don't think there's anything wrong with going back to a team that was 1 quarter away from winning a Super Bowl. Moving on now to Austin Hooper. And I have a funny story about Austin Hooper. So I'm in a keeper fantasy football league, and I inherited the worst team in the league. Now, there was a guy who had Baker Mayfield and Aaron Rodgers on his team. The guy's name was Mike. Nice guy. I asked him, because my quarterback was Phillip Rivers. I wanted a young franchise quarterback, and I really thought Mayfield was going to have a great year last year. He really didn't have a good year last year, but whatever, I'll get to how my fantasy football team did in a minute. I had texted him a bunch of times, what do you want from Mayfield? What do you want from Mayfield? He always hemmed and hawed. I knew he wanted to trade Mayfield. I mean, why would you keep them both? I had the first overall pick. So I was offering that and Austin Hooper. My first trade offer was Hooper and a swap of ones. I think he had 7. So it was Hooper and 1 for 7. He said no. He did not like Austin Hooper. So then the draft gets closer, and I keep asking him about Mayfield. Finally, an hour before the draft, he finally exchanges names with me. He really hemmed and hawed all throughout. Sunday, I had texted him my trade offer, I think on Saturday. Sunday, he gets back to me and says, no deal, have a better offer. That was his exact text. Monday, I texted him, hey, Mayfield hasn't been traded yet. Is he still available? Yes. Who do you want from my team? Let me look at it and I'll get back to you. Well, finally, it's an hour before the draft, and I text him, hey, we're an hour before the draft. Are we doing this thing or not? It's okay if we're not. I just want to know. And finally, we exchanged some names. He did not want Austin Hooper. I was begging him to take Hooper. Because, believe it or not, and I got this really wrong, with my pick that I got from him, which I think was 7th overall, I was going to take Vance McDonald. I thought McDonald would have a similar enough year to Hooper that I wouldn't miss a lot of his production. Now, there's no question that I was wrong about that, and McDonald ended up being off my team at the end of the year. But I begged him to take Austin Hooper, and he wouldn't. Finally, we swung a trade. The trade ended up being a swap of picks. I don't remember exactly where the picks were, but I can tell you that we did a pick swap. He took Josh Jacobs first overall. That's who I would have taken if I didn't do this trade. I took Vance McDonald. I really shouldn't have. I should have gone a different direction. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but still, I'm not happy about that. I had an extra second that I had gotten in a trade that the previous owner made. I inherited the worst team in the league. The previous owner of the team had made a trade to get an extra second round pick, so I traded that. he took Geronimo Allison with that pick. Allison did not have a great year. He got Marvin Jones, but it was funny how he got Jones. I had to use, I think it was my 3rd round pick on Jones. See, what happened was we agreed to the trade a half hour before the draft, and I texted the commissioner, hey, I just pulled off this trade, can you adjust the rosters? No, I can't. So we ended up reworking it around the draft, and you have no idea how much I was hoping and praying that Marvin Jones would slip to me. But he was there in the 3rd round. And I took him. And that really completed the trade. So I got Mayfield, McDonald. I also got Christian Kirk in that deal. I knew Kirk was going to have a big year. I got that right. But I ended up trading him later for Devontae Freeman. I really needed a running back. I had a bunch of wide receivers, so that's why I did that deal. And we did a swap of RB1s. He got Le'Veon Bell. I got Todd Gurley. Gurley towards the end of the year was a monster. And Bell really disappointed. So the total trade was Geronimo Allison, Marvin Jones, Josh Jacobs, and Le'Veon Bell. That was what I gave up. And I got Vance McDonald, Christian Kirk, Baker Mayfield, and Todd Gurley. Bear in mind, this is a keeper league. I think I'm set up pretty well for the future. I really like Mayfield. I still think the sky's the limit for him. But, okay, that was some tangent. On to Austin Hooper. With Ebron going to the Packers under this scenario, I think that Hooper is going to end up with the Colts. That would give Jacoby Brissett a fantastic fallback option if Hilton is covered or misses games. The Falcons also don't have any cap space. They have the second least amount of cap room in the NFL right now with just under $4 million. The Steelers have the least with just over $1.5 million. The Falcons can't bring Hooper back. As for how much he's going to get, I think Hooper's going to be in line for a big contract. I think he can get $8.75 million a year. Believe it or not, Mike, I knew what I was talking about when I wanted you to take Hooper. I valued him a lot higher than you, and, well, you should have listened to me, because I made the playoffs and you didn't. I took a team that was the worst team in the league to the 4 seed, but I ended up losing my 2 playoff games. The 4-5 matchup and the consolation game. So technically I finished 6th, but I'm going to tell myself I finished 4th just to make myself feel better. Next on the list is Brashad Perryman. And Perryman is kind of a weird guy to project a contract for. Looked like he was going to flame out of the NFL. Was taken a lot higher than he should have been because he had a great combine. And then last year for the Buccaneers, he had a good year. Normally those guys get paid a lot of money. But I think teams are going to realize that Perryman is just decent. I don't even know if I'd call him good. This is his one good year. There's a team with a decent amount of cap space that I haven't projected any free agents to, but I actually think is a pretty desirable destination. And that is the Arizona Cardinals. I think Brashad Perryman would be perfect for the Arizona Cardinals. He could learn from Larry Fitzgerald. He gives Kyler Murray a really, really fast weapon. Perryman is lightning fast, and that seems like an understatement. I'd be really interested to see how Cliff Kingsbury uses him. The one thing I'll say is, There are a lot of people anointing Kingsbury as the next great offensive wunderkind, the next Sean McVay. I mean, the Cardinals still finished last in the division. Kyler Murray had a really good year, and I think he's going to be a great player in this league for a long time. But I think it's too early to say that Cliff Kingsbury is the next Sean McVay. Having said that, though, I'd be very excited to see how he deploys Fitzgerald, Kirk, and Perryman. I think Perryman makes a ton of sense for the Cardinals. Moving on now to Melvin Gordon, and there are 3 scenarios that I could see with him. The first one is he doesn't sign immediately. He waits until training camp or the preseason, and if the running back goes down, he's going to latch on with them. Number 2, he's going to sign with the Chiefs on a 1-year prove-it deal to try to win a Super Bowl, rehabilitate his stock. It's at an all-time low right now. And if he wins a Super Bowl and gives Mahomes a dynamic weapon out of the backfield, he'd get a big contract in free agency. The third one is he could go to the Dolphins, where he'd immediately be their franchise running back, would give Tua a fantastic weapon, or Bridgewater a fantastic weapon, or Fitzpatrick a fantastic weapon out of the backfield, whatever they're going to do. I have no idea what the Dolphins are going to do at quarterback. I think Bridgewater makes sense for him. I said that on Friday, but whatever. Out of those 3 scenarios, I think the best fit for him is the Chiefs. Now, he may be tempted to take the big contract from the Dolphins, and Lord knows he makes sense for the Dolphins. No one's going to mistake Patrick Laird and Myles Gaskin for Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders anytime soon. So it would make sense for the Dolphins to throw a lot of money at Melvin Gordon, make him an offer that he can't refuse. But if I was him, I'd sign with the Chiefs on a 1-year prove-it deal. I think that's the best move for him. And he'd get to stick it to his old team by playing him twice. The final guy who I'm going to talk about is Kyle Van Noy. I really like Van Noy. Kills me to say it because he's a Patriot, but he's a really solid player. I've seen some rumors linking him to the Jets. It would make sense if they can't get Clowney. But I think Van Noy is going to end back up with the Patriots. I think he's happy there. It's a great fit for him. His career took off ever since he went there. It's really the perfect fit. Sign him to an $8 million a year deal. You can restructure a couple guys, get some more cap breathing room. You're bringing back 3 really good players in Brady, McCourty, and Van Noy. That sets you up pretty well for one last title run. Or 2 last title runs, depending on how long you sign Brady for. You just have to hit on your draft picks, which the Patriots have always done. Alright, so that does it for this show. There will not be an episode of the Jacob Valk Show until Friday. That is when I am going to break down everything that happened in free agency. That includes cuts, signings, trades, you name it. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to go through all 32 teams. The only thing I'm going to say about that show is it may go up a little later than you're used to. Closer to like 4:30, 5 o'clock. Maybe. I don't know. All I'm saying is just be prepared for that. I know that the show where I talked solely about the coronavirus was a late upload, but that was because I was holding out hope that the Paul Logothetis interview would be salvaged. It wasn't. I have a new system to record interviews. I think it's going to work out really well. So that interview is in the process of being rescheduled. I have a few interviews in the hopper already. So all I can say is Friday, NFL free agency breakdown, and the week after that, the Jacob Valk Show as per usual. I know exactly what I'm going to do to fill up those 5 days, so don't worry. You're going to get really good content from me. I promise. I hope you have a good week. I hope you stay safe. Follow the recommended protocols. Be smart. Be vigilant. And we'll get through this together. I promise. Until Friday, I am Jacob Valk saying that there should be a common sense clause in all contracts.